Hello, I'm Tim Harris. This is Julie Harris, and this is Real Estate Coaching Radio.
That's right. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any future episodes. Thanks again for popping by. Hit that like button, and don't forget to leave your comments and questions so we can get right back with you.
We will. Thank you for continuing to make our podcast, Real Estate Coaching Radio, the #1 listened to podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. And let us know what you think about this video. Leave your comments below. Thank you.
We have a wonderful show for you today. We're going to focus on the top 7 reasons to be a listing agent. Why are we presenting this to you today? Because a lot of you, frankly, don't realize that your goal in real estate should absolutely positively be to become a listing agent. Why? Because of the 7 reasons we're about to give you, but I'll foreshadow all the reasons now. When you are the listing agent, you have control, you have leverage. When you are a listing agent, the listing becomes your leverage, and if you're working with buyers, you are the leverage for the buyer. You will understand more of that when we get to the first point. So, Julie?
Yes, that's right. Remember, in your notes, the listing agent always wins, always. And your job is to be on the listing side of the business as often as possible. Now, let's clarify before we do our first point. We are not suggesting that you stop working with buyers, simply that you focus mainly on being a listing agent. Why? Because all good things come from listings. We're going to tell you that right now, starting with reason number 1. Listings generate more business. What, Tim?
We should tell them and be very clear about this, that a lot of you, especially those of you who've been so focused on working with buyers for a long period of time, you've got to have a little coming to Jesus session with yourself about 2 thoughts. Number 1, why are you choosing to work with buyers over listings? It's not like, I know there is a perception of a lack of listing, but for every buyer that buys a house, they're buying somebody's listing. So there are plenty of listings to be had, at least 4.5 million this year, not including new construction. So that was a lot of listings out there that went to somebody. So if your perception is that working with listings is something you have to wait and you have to earn your right to be a listing agent, and my listings will be when my buyers end up listing their homes. All this type of crap that has been told to mostly new agents over the generations has essentially put you guys in this long-term state of essentially never actually having experienced the best part of being in real estate, which is being a listing agent. So don't think for a second that you can't become a listing agent the second you get your real estate license. Julie and I did. We listed and sold over 100 homes our first year in the business when we were in our 20s. And we did that by doing all the things we teach you guys how to do and all the things we've taught literally hundreds of thousands of other agents to do over the last 25 years. So do not believe for a second that you have to wait around for somebody to tap you on your shoulder and somehow say, now you can actually become a listing agent. Now I'm going to give you the other reason why a lot of you focus working on buyers. It's because working with buyers is mostly a social skill. Mostly physical labor, as Julie says in our best-selling book, Harris Rules, because you're giving away all of your time and you're, showing homes. That's a lot of physical labor. Does not require a lot of skill. That's just a fact. Working with listings, working with sellers does require skill, so it's more of a mental aspect. So working with buyers is physical labor. Working with sellers is mental labor. You can learn the mental aspect of it. You can learn the scripts. You can learn the systems. And then, if you give yourself permission not to wait around for somebody to tap you on your shoulder, you can become a listing agent urgently, which all of you should be doing.
And not just learn it, but become really, really great at it.
Yeah, and because, the thing that I personally always loved about, being a listing agent, coaching agents who have their heads screwed on straight about this, is it is an absolute process. It's like working at the post office. That's
it's a system. It can be
Exactly.
systematized.
It's the same thing. It's the same conversation. If anything, when you become really efficient at being a listing agent, your greatest bugaboo is going to be that it's boring, because it is boring, because it's essentially the same conversation.
So predictable.
The sellers, it's almost like the whole thing's like a screenplay, especially when you're doing the proactive lead generation. You pretty much know exactly what the seller is going to say, when they're going to say it. The whole thing is and every single day is going to feel like Groundhog Day, except for one thing. Your bank account's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Your confidence is going to get larger. Your sense of freedom and accomplishment is going to increase. If you want to have that sense of actually being successful because you know you're successful, not just because you're trying to let the world think you're successful because of all your marketing and your advertising, this is absolutely what you need to be focused on, is becoming a powerful listing agent. So, Julie, step number 1, top 7 reasons why they need to become a listing agent.
Yes, reason number 1, listings generate more business. Excuse me. Buyers generally don't. You can sell your listing, sell it to your own buyer, generate new listing leads from each listing, plus an endless supply of buyers. Then simply lather, rinse, repeat. One listing leads to the next, and so on and so forth.
And you can get a lot of listings, by the way, without having to buy them. Though there are some good lead sources that we teach you guys how to tap into in Premier Coaching. The reality of it is generally speaking, you can get most of your listings without ever having to pay a referral fee. By the way, the notes for today's show, all 7 points are down below. If you're on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or even on YouTube, just scroll down. All the show notes, like I said, are there waiting for you. You can follow along with us. A lot of you use our podcast notes and our podcasts for training your offices, your teams, your brokerages, and now you can also use the notes. And when you're there, when you're reading the notes, please do remember that it is a great time for you to join Premier Coaching, and the link to join Premier Coaching is also below. You'll see it, and as always, yes, you do have full access to the first level of Premier Coaching, including a daily semi-private coaching call. You know you want to join Premier Coaching. Scroll down below and take to the next natural step. You love this podcast. We know you do. Well, then you cannot imagine the experience you're going to have. You think you guys get great content on this podcast? This is just an overview. The real content is in the coaching program. So scroll down below and join Premier Coaching. The link is there waiting for you. Julie, point number 2.
Reason number 2, you can handle more listings at once than you can buyers. Listing inventory is scalable. For example, would you rather have 5 active, well-priced, motivated seller clients or listings, or 5 buyer clients all scrambling to find the right house, subject to financing being approved and able to just stay put and not actually buy? Remember that buyers never actually have to buy. Sellers do often have to sell.
We need to drill down on that.
Yes.
Because that is one of the most important points. I remember when you and I originally learned this, it was after we were in the business for maybe only 6 or 8 months. Mm-hmm. We went to a Howard Brinton seminar.
Yep.
It was in Cincinnati. I remember it.
Remember.
And I remember Howard said, was taking a poll in the audience how many houses agents had sold. Mm-hmm. And Julie and I had already sold 60 or 70 houses, and he practically dropped the mic when we answered the question, how long have you been in real estate?
I know, because we looked like we were 12.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but here's one of the things I took away from that, and it really is an absolute incredible, thought exercise. Mm-hmm. You guys, listen, listeners, give me an example of a buyer that has to buy. Absolutely, positively has to buy. They don't exist. You can say 1031 tax exchange, but I'll disagree because they can always just pay the taxes. So there's no such thing as a buyer that has to buy. And that's the reason working with buyers is so damn frustrating, because you're never going to have you always in the back of your mind know that the buyer is going to, they could change their mind.
They could flake. They could ghost you. They could lose their motivation to buy. And what's interesting is when you think about it realistically, you can have buyers who are really motivated but not actually qualified. And you can also have buyers that are super qualified but not motivated. You have to have all the stars in alignment. You have to not just find inventory, which has been a challenge for quite some time, but you have to then compete, you have to win, and they have to get their financing and in a higher interest rate environment. That is a lot of risk versus working with listings.
And when you work with sellers, you're not going to get, when you're working with a have to sell seller, and we're going to drill down examples of that here in 2 seconds, so, get ready. When you're working with have to sell sellers, they're not going to email you one day and say they just changed their mind. No one's going to say, I absolutely positively have to sell my house today. They're not going to say that and then tomorrow say, I changed my mind.
And they don't have to qualify to sell either.
Exactly. So you guys get the difference?
Yeah.
Here, if that's not good enough, imagine you had 5 listings at all times, or whatever your magic number is that you need. And we teach you guys to do that in the first, know what your magic number is in the first level of Premier Coaching. So make sure you join Premier Coaching. But here's the point. If you had 5 listings at all times, and all you wanted to do was have 5 listings, you don't even want to work with buyers anymore. The buyers that come off those listings, the leads that the buyers calling, you can refer those off to other agents for 35% or whatever. I'm not suggesting you do this, but I'm saying you could, hypothetically. You could add, maybe you want to have independent agents that are going to start working with you as part of your team, and you're going to start sending them leads because you now have consistent leads coming off all of your listings. Would you rather be in that position, or would you rather be the one that's giving up every single night and weekend? You don't hear about agents getting burned out as listing agents. The burned out stories and all the hilarious memes on Instagram mostly are all from agents that are working on the buyer side of the business.
100%.
And so don't think, and this is focused even on, the veteran agents who've been in the business for a long period of time, who've never heard this message before. You need to really put all your best efforts, not towards your Instagram following, but towards learning how to become a powerful listing agent and buy back your freedom. Point number 3.
Point number 3, or reason number 3, why you should be the listing agent as often as possible. Your for sale, pending, and closed sign is actually a mini billboard in the neighborhoods you want more listings in. You don't get that with buyers.
I mean, that's really, I often
A
think,
little known point, right?
but I often think how amazing that is. Imagine if, for example, pharmaceutical companies could pay homeowners a certain amount of money to put a little like a Viagra sign in someone's front yard, right?
I know, right?
Yeah, I mean, or whatever,
Or whatever.
Just imagine, like you're driving down the street and everybody's front yard has these little mini billboards with advertising different products in them. I bet you companies, I know for sure, companies would pay it would be the biggest industry overnight if that became legal.
Absolutely.
So if
we had a coaching client that used to sell actual billboard space. And it was, people pay tons of money for that.
A normal billboard.
Normal billboards,
Right.
yeah.
But nothing's going to be more powerful than a large sign in the front of someone's house because it's an endorsement. There is my neighbor who is clearly endorsing the product that's on the sign. That's what you get with a for sale sign.
And
you
then
don't
the sold sign after the pending sign.
Exactly. You don't get that. So that's one of those little silly things that people just take for granted. Some of you don't even put signs in your yards when you take listings, which is insane. And we have done a past podcast, do a lot of coaching about really how to, Julie calls it hot rod your real estate sign. Your real estate sign is and always will be the most powerful marketing tool for real estate agents that nobody talks about because, frankly, it's something that people just take for granted. And a really powerfully well done for sale sign will generate more leads, more listings, more other opportunities, especially when there's a sold sign at the top of it, letting all the world know that you are successful. Point number four.
Number four. All right. Listing agents have more security than agents who are buyer dependent. The old saying, you have to list to last, is absolutely true. Why? Because once you're out of buyers, you're out of business. That's it. They're not going to keep generating. Even a sold sign, once maybe it's sitting there sold and it closed last week, it's still generating business for you. So point number 5, buyer's agent commissions are more likely to be negotiated, eliminated, or thrown at the deal during negotiations. Not every listing pays the same to the buyer's agent. Not every builder pays a buyer's side commission at all. In an inventory scarce market, some buyer's agents have been chipping in their own commission just to get the deal done in a competitive situation.
And it compounds because many of you have made the mistake of thinking that it's normal to buy buyer leads. Listen,
Yeah,
buyer
that's true,
leads
too.
are the easiest thing. They're more plentiful than air, okay? When you have a listing and you just hot rod your real estate sign, just do some of the very basic things we teach you to do in Premier Coaching, you're going to have to beat the buyers off with a stick. And that's something our broker, Rory, told us when we first got in the real estate business, because we were having to go through all this learning ourselves. And he said, take a listing, put a sign in the yard, and you'll have to beat the buyers off the stick. And you will get so many buyer leads. It does become annoying sometimes, depending on the listing. But those buyers, depending on the price point, if you're listing a house that's $500,000, there's a good chance that's not a first-time buyer house, depending on your market, right? That's going to be a property that someone's going to have another house to sell before they can buy that one. Now, if you're in one of our upper-end markets and the house is $1.5 million, I get it. In some cases, that is a first-time home buyer house. But for the most part, realize that when you list a house for sale, the people that are calling, that are showing up in your life as a buyer, probably also have homes to sell. So that's the reason you have to call them back urgently. We call it Furiously Fast Lead Follow-Up, and you have to use our buyer pre-qualification script. And then, lo and behold, what Tim and Julie have been saying forever is right, at least half of those buyer leads, air quoting here, are actually sellers. You just have to ask, and then you'll get the listing appointment. That's how it compounds. But you don't get that if you don't have a sign in the yard, if you're not a listing agent. If you're just a buyer's agent, you're waiting around for somebody to sell you another, I was going to say damn, I'll say it, damn buyer lead, right? And you guys are sometimes spending 30 to 40 to 50% for a referral fee for a buyer lead. It doesn't matter what reload, it doesn't matter what company it's from. Why are you doing that? You can generate your own buyer leads, but you won't want to, because when you're a listing agent, you're going to bask in the glory of essentially having the income come from all the other buyer's agents out there like say, for example, you're from Ohio where Julie and I are from, and it's in February and it's cold and it's snowy and you're sitting at home reading a book. You have your 5 listings, your 7 listings, your 10 listings, and all the other agents in the marketplace are out there forging the weather to show and sell your listing for you.
Shoveling their way to your lockbox.
Exactly. While you are at home. Which position would you rather be in?
Interesting, isn't it? Okay, point number 6, why you want to be a listing agent as often as possible. Well, buyers are getting sick of losing and are going directly to listing agents or deciding to check out of the market and wait, or simply ghosting their alleged buyer's agent.
That's a really good point.
That doesn't really happen to listing agents.
Well, 100%. And so I think, frankly, all these, portals, Zillow being the biggest one, a lot of people have buyers in particular, have really gotten savvy to the fact that the agent that's being advertised, and I realize some of this has changed, but the essence of it is still there. The listing agent, unless they're paying, is hidden from that prospective buyer looking on Zillow. And then you're supposed to be, fooled into believing that the buyer's agent who's paying to have their advertisement next to somebody else's listing is actually the listing agent. Well, here's actually what's happened. Buyers have become sophisticated enough that they're not even calling anymore. They can do a little bit of Googling and they can drop the address into Google and find out who the actual listing agent is. And they're going directly to the listing agent, or they're calling the number on the sign. So those of you who are thinking that you can just buy buyer leads until the cows come home, you're not going to be able to, because the buyers are becoming more sophisticated. They don't like that bait and switch. And I happen to know that many of you don't like having that baiter, being the person that's doing the baiting and the switching. You don't like having to dance around the fact that that buyer calling is, believing that you're the listing agent. And that's the reason that a lot of these companies are giving you guys these fancy scripts, how you're somehow supposed to move around the obvious answer to the question, are you the listing agent? They're trying to give you ways to make it so that it's obscured.
The scripts are terrible because they basically force you to lie.
Yeah, that's what it is. So if you're forced to lie, then maybe you shouldn't be doing that activity, right? You guys getting what we're saying here? The whole industry of buying buyer leads is definitely cloaked in a lot of bait and switch, a lot of stuff that frankly is, some of you, you do rightfully feel a little bit scummy when you're buying buyer leads, and you should remind yourselves that you wouldn't have to be participating in any of that if you were a listing agent. Free yourself from all that, I think emotional baggage. How are you going to keep a long-term relationship with somebody who initiated business with you, believing that you were the listing agent only to find out that you weren't? You started your relationship with a lie. Have you guys ever thought about that?
It's awful. Okay, point number 7, our final point today, why you want to be a listing agent. You don't have a contract with your buyer, most of you, unless you're a Premier Coaching member and have been trained on how to do that. But you do with a listing. It's called your listing contract. How do you know that, quote, your buyers will be loyal, will ever buy, or will buy with you? You don't really. Anything could happen. It's the Wild West when you work with buyers.
Well, because buyer's agency contracts, and we are huge advocates of using them, the reality is someone essentially violates your buyer's agency contract, I'm going to say definitely your situation might not apply. Maybe it's some really ridiculous situation where you will want to sue them. But for the most part, your broker is not going to want to support you in suing a buyer that, went out and bought a FSBO. It's just not going to happen. And it'll trash your reputation too. So, buyer's agency agreements are essentially the framework for an exclusive relationship. But if put to the test, if you have any business acumen, frankly, you're not going to enforce it. And I know that you're going to say, some of you, and rightfully so, well, what kind of contract is that's not going to be enforced? It's very simple. It's a understanding. It's a working agreement about how I'm going to work with you, Mr. Buyer, and how you're going to work with me. Unlike a listing contract, that has the exact terms and conditions laid out, that's very specific, that's frankly super simple to reinforce, that you very rarely hear about sellers that are violating the terms of their listing contracts, but you do hear, quite frankly, about buyers who will essentially not respect the terms and conditions of the buyer's agreement.
All the procuring cause cases are about buyers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're not about listings. So
the stress lies on the buyer side for sure.
Completely, especially in this market.
So the conclusion, be the listing agent. It's a better, more sustainable lifestyle, more financially secure, and keeps momentum in your business. Listings are the lifeblood of your real estate practice. And if that's not true for you just yet, well, it's time to get some help.
Now, can we give them a big bonus point?
Sure.
Those of you who've listened to us for the whole podcast today.
Reading your mind.
Yeah, okay, here it is. It's the biggest secret on how to be a successful listing agent. Ready? I'm going to tell this to you. Normally, we only share this with you after you've been a coaching client for 47,000 years. And then we take you into this room, it's like a matrix room where you have to go through a bunch of doors with locked keys, and we're going to spin you around a million times so you don't know where you are. And then we're going to tell you the secret. Here it is. The secret to being a wormhole. The secret to being a successful listing agent is have the listing when it sells. Have the listing when it sells. So that goes back to a lot of the previous points we were sharing with you guys this past few shows about understanding that a lot of agents didn't enter into their relationships with their sellers 6 months, 12 months ago, that it was going to be a little harder to sell, that the market was going to be a little bit gnarlier than the seller was anticipating. And there is going to be, for the rest of the next 6 to 12 months, a lot of opportunities for you guys to be very effective proactive lead generators. Use this podcast, these 7 points on why you want to become a listing agent. And frankly, I'm sure most of you, if you've not yet grown weary of working with buyers as your exclusive source of income, you soon will, especially after listening to these 7 points. Now we're going to throw another log in the fire and help you to realize that some of the best opportunities to become a listing agent are still in front of you because of the fact that there's such a lack of skill set on how to be a proactive lead generator. I told you the super secret to being a long-term successful listing agent, have the listing when it sells. Well, that means expired listings. That means for sale by owner listings. That means all the sources that we share with you on a regular basis. You really, truly need to be focusing in on those, and you'll be shocked how quickly you can build listing inventory because your competition only knows how to do things that are passive. Buying leads, social media, advertising, marketing. Look, guys, those things do have a place in your business, but it goes in this order. Proactive lead generation first, because that puts you in a position to help people make money the fastest. Then, if you choose to, you can reinforce with passive lead generation. Passive lead generation often does not work, or if it does, takes an extraordinary amount of time for it to work. That's the reason when you ask somebody who's trying to sell you into a long-term, branding campaign, how long before I actually see closed transactions, if they're even 1% honest, they're going to tell you they don't know, or they're going to tell you it could be a year. And then when a year passes and you still haven't earned enough money to even pay for the service that they provided for you, you're going to ask the same question and they're going to tell you another year, another year, another year. And then you're going to laugh at yourself because you're going to realize you should have just been a proactive lead generator in the first place and saved all the money that you spent on all the marketing and branding.
Yeah, I was just remembering back when we were doing the clubhouses during the pandemic. I will never forget, you asked the question of the people attending, of the grizzled veterans, what is the number one mistake that you wish you either weren't making currently or would cure looking back? And I can't remember her name, but she said, now that I look back over my first 4 years in the business, it seems to me like I had my purse just open to people reaching in and taking dollar after dollar after dollar, speculating that something has got to work. She said, now I see that I'm the one who has to do the work.
Yeah, I honestly feel like when Julie and I are doing, especially shows like we've been doing recently, I feel like we're grabbing you guys by the collar and we're shaking you. We're trying to shake you awake. Bob, wake up, wake up, wake up. You don't have to suffer needlessly. You don't actually have to, spend all this money on speculation that someday you're going to make money. You can make money today helping people today, and it's not as difficult as you think. Wake up, Bob. I realize everyone else is telling you something different except for Tim and Julie. But you now know, even if you've only been in the business for a day, let alone, 10 years, you know what we're saying is the truth. So it's time. This is your market if you choose to make it your market. If you're having your best year ever, don't slow down. Don't break your momentum. If you're not having your best year ever and you're not, wherever you are in the year, then you can continue. You can actually fix that. Guys, you've got to realize that your experiences on planet Earth, especially in this real estate industry, are a direct reflection of the effort you put in yesterday, the week before, the month before, 6 months ago. So that is where it's at going forward. What are you doing today to make it so the future version of you is absolutely singing the praises of the current version of you? Thank God I actually did what I didn't want to do, and I didn't want to do it at the highest level 6 months ago, because now I'm getting the benefit from it. You guys get it? It's not any more difficult than that. It is.
The answer to any question in real estate is always take another listing.
Yeah, for sure. Rory used to say that to us. A bad day, something fell out, you got kicked in the head a few times, hopefully not literally. Yeah. And Rory would say to us, take another listing. Go take a listing. Go take a listing.
Tell me how you feel then.
And he was right. If you went,
right.
The best self-help book ever written was a listing contract signed.
That's right. Well, you guys do like to complain a lot about lack of inventory and it's so hard. The buyer side's so competitive. Well, you've got to make your mindset change to the huge blessing of a low inventory market as a listing agent, because you can list virtually anything, assuming that it's priced based on comps.
Sort of right.
And it's staged sort of right, not even super
Right.
accurate. And it's staged reasonably well, and you give people access to it. And it not only will sell almost right away. Oh, no, I know we're up to 21 days average on the market instead of 21 seconds, but it's still going to sell.
When Julie and I were selling real estate, the average days in our MLS was 183. We would go to listing appointments and brag about ours of being only 61. That was 61 before it was in contract, and then another 30 days before it closed. And we were rock stars because we could usually get them out of their house in 91 days.
You guys are going to be okay. But the point is, the listing agent always wins, right? So in summary, be the listing more frequently. It is a big blessing to have, when you take a listing and you don't have 40 other homes competing with you, take advantage of that fact. Lead generate off of your listings, and of course, sell your listings, lather, rinse, repeat.
Thank you for keeping this the number one listened to daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
Hello, thank you for having watched this video. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
That's right. And don't forget to hit that like button, leave your comments and questions below, and we will get right back with you.
Thank you for watching this video. And remember to watch the next one. You're going to love that one.